What if I told you that a single Monday morning could unravel everything you thought you knew about your marriage? Picture this: a seemingly ordinary day, a nagging sense of unease, and a secret that would shatter the very foundation of your life. It was only 8:45 a.m., but this Monday was shaping up to be the worst day of my life. Earlier that morning, I kissed my wife, Sarah, on the cheek and wished her a good day. Sarah, a real estate agent and a damn good one judging by her commissions and bonuses, had been in the business for most of our 15-year marriage. "You have a good day too," she replied in that fake, overly sweet realtor voice she loved to use. She knew I hated that voice and the phony persona that came with it. To make matters worse, she smirked at me as if she had some secret she was hiding. I shrugged it off and made my way to the office, thinking about the pile of work waiting on my desk. I had several reports to finish before the end of the month, which was rapidly approaching. As usual, I arrived at the office at 7:45, put down my briefcase, and headed to the men's room for a cup of coffee. Then it hit me. Standing at the urinal, I felt a sharp, excruciating pain running through my penis. I screamed in agony. My immediate supervisor, John Matthews, was using the urinal 2 stalls away. He heard my scream, finished his business, and came over to check on me. "Tom, what's wrong?" he asked worriedly. "By the way, I am Tom Jenkins." "I feel like I'm on fire," I said. We looked into the urinal and saw a greenish discharge. I had never been so disgusted in my life. "Okay, Tom," John said. "Go get checked out. Let me know what the doctor says." "I need to finish all these reports," I moaned. "Don't worry about them," he said. "I'll take care of them in the meantime. You take care of yourself. If you need to take a few days off, let me know. You have plenty of sick leave in reserve." "Thanks, boss," I said. "I'm sorry about that." "Hey, life happens," he said with a reassuring smile, trying to cheer me up. I washed my face and went back to my office, where I picked up my briefcase on the way out. I told the receptionist that I would be gone for the next day, maybe more. I thought about going to my regular doctor, but his office was on the other side of town, and I doubted I could get an appointment today. So I decided to go to the urgent care center a few blocks from the office. They took samples and asked me to sit in the waiting room while they analyzed them. It seemed like an eternity, but it was only half an hour. Finally, a nurse called my name. "Tom Jenkins," the young woman called out. I looked up and saw her beckoning me toward her. She looked at me like I was an insect. I couldn't help but wonder why, and got up to follow her. She pointed to the observation room. "Have a seat, Mr. Jenkins," she said in a very unfriendly tone. I sat down and watched her sit down, looking at the piece of paper in front of her. She began to take my vitals, blood pressure, temperature, and so on. After she wrote everything down, she looked at me. "The doctor will be here soon," she said before leaving the room. A few minutes later, I heard a knock on the door, and an older gentleman in a white coat looked in. When he saw me, he walked into the room with a folder and sat down. "Mr. Jenkins, I am Dr. Roberts," he said. "Your preliminary test results have come back, and it appears you have a rather nasty case of gonorrhea." "Gonorrhea?" I asked, shocked. "How is that possible?" "It is a sexually transmitted disease, Mr. Jenkins," he said, looking at me like I was an idiot. "I will prescribe you an antibiotic and recommend that you abstain from sexual activity for 7 days after treatment is complete. If symptoms persist after treatment, I recommend that you see your primary care physician." He explained that other tests were ongoing, and I might not get the results for a couple of weeks or more. He also demanded a list of everyone I had been with lately. "I've only been sexually intimate with one person in my entire life," I said. "My wife." He looked at me sadly for a few moments before turning his attention to my chart. "But if I contracted it from her, wouldn't she have symptoms too?" "Not necessarily, Mr. Jenkins," he said. "Even if she has symptoms, she could mistake them for a bladder or vaginal infection. She should be examined as soon as possible. The longer she waits, the greater the risk of developing serious complications." He handed me a packet of pills and made me sign some forms. "Take care of yourself, Mr. Jenkins, and don't forget to consult your doctor," he said before leaving. Great, I thought to myself. as I went through the checkout process. I got in my car and called my boss to give him the news. "I'm sorry to hear that, Tom," John said. "Don't worry. Discretion is my middle name. You take a leave of absence and come back when you're cleared. I've already forwarded your reports, so don't worry about anything. Get well." "Thank you," I said, ending the conversation. I dreaded making the next call, but I had never kept anything from my parents and was not about to start now. I pressed my parents' speed dial button and heard my father pick up the phone. "Hey, son, how's it going?" he asked. "Are you at work?" "No, Dad, I have a little problem and I need to talk with you and Mom if that's okay." "Of course," he said. "Are the kids okay?" "As far as I know," I said. "I don't want to talk about this over the phone." "Well, come over and we can talk over a cup of coffee," he said. We finished talking, and I put my phone away before heading outside. I suppose I should explain something about my family. My sister Emily and I grew up in a very religious household. Our home was filled with laughter and love, and we had a happy childhood. Our parents loved each other very much, but we were brought up with some pretty strict rules. One of them was about sex outside of marriage. A big no-no in my parents' opinion. Because of this, I never went all the way with any woman until I married Sarah. Sure, I dated and fooled around a little, but that was it. I remembered the day I told Sarah I wanted to wait until we were married to have sex. She smiled broadly and kissed me deeply. "That's so sweet," she said. "I promise I will rock your world on our wedding night." And she did. I had never felt anything so warm in my life. She didn't seem bothered by my lack of experience, and I gladly let her teach me how to love her the way she liked. I even started to enjoy having sex with Sarah, and she seemed to enjoy it too. I knew she wasn't a virgin when we got married, but I didn't mind as long as she stayed faithful after we tied the knot. Sarah began working at a large real estate firm in town while she worked on getting her license. About a year into our marriage, she gave birth to our first daughter, Lily. A year after Lily was born, our second daughter, Emma, came into our lives. Sarah had a difficult time giving birth to Emma, so she decided to have her tubes tied, saying 2 kids were enough for any couple. I respected her choice, even though I had hoped for a son. Still, I was more than happy with our 2 daughters. They both quickly became Daddy's girls, and I adored them. Once her maternity leave ended, Sarah plunged back into her career with renewed vigor. Many evenings I found myself playing the role of Mr. Mom while she showed houses or did paperwork late into the night. I didn't mind. I loved my girls and cherished the time I spent taking care of them. As the girls grew older, I became even more involved in their lives, taking them to their extracurricular activities. Lily had a passion for music and took piano and guitar lessons, while Emma excelled in sports, playing softball and soccer. As time passed, I noticed that Sarah was disappearing more and more frequently. It wasn't just in the evenings anymore. She often attended out-of-town seminars on weekends and was away for a whole week during the company's annual retreats. Although she called every night to check in and say hello to the girls, it never felt like enough. Adding to my frustration was her increasingly fake persona, which she stubbornly refused to drop despite my repeated complaints. Her obsession with work seemed to grow, and even the girls started noticing the change in their mother. Yet I never imagined she would cheat on me. She knew how strongly I felt about infidelity. One day after visiting my parents' house, I pulled into their driveway. Dad greeted me at the door with a big hug and a pat on the back. "The coffee just finished brewing. Come on in and we'll sit and talk," he said. I walked into the dining room and hugged my mom before we sat down at the table. Mom poured us coffee and I added cream and sugar just the way I liked it. Dad did the same and we both took a sip. "Why don't we start with a prayer?" Dad suggested. I was used to this routine by now. Prayer always came first, followed by discussion. We prayed for a few minutes, then got down to business. "What is wrong, son?" Dad asked. "I just came from the urgent care clinic. I have gonorrhea," I said. "Oh my God," Dad said quietly. One thing I admired about him was his ability to handle anything as long as it was the truth. "Were you fooling around?" he asked after a few awkward moments. "No, Dad, never. Sarah is the only woman I've ever been with," I replied. He nodded. "I believe you, son. I just needed to hear it from you." "So what are you planning to do?" Mom asked. "I don't see any other option but to divorce her over this," I said. "It's going to be hard on the girls," she said. "Yeah, but they're old enough to understand," I said. "Besides, there's no way I can let this go. Even if she promises never to do it again, I will never trust her." "Do you have any idea how long this has been going on?" Dad asked. "No, nothing. I just found out this morning," I said. "Adultery is a valid reason for divorce," he said. "I hate that this is happening, but I don't see any other way out. Hold on a second," he added, getting up and heading into his office. I looked at my mom, who appeared devastated. "I'm so sorry this happened, Tom. I always thought Sarah was a wonderful girl." "Me too, Mom," I said. "She fooled us all." By then, Dad had returned with his Rolodex. He went through the cards until he found the one he was looking for. "There she is," he said triumphantly. "Do you know Gina Hawkins?" "Yeah, she goes to our church, right?" I asked. "Yes, she's a family law attorney. Let me give her a call," he said. I was not surprised that he had her card. As a deacon at the church, Dad had a collection of cards from parishioners. I listened as he called Gina's office and spoke to the receptionist, who transferred him to Gina. "Gina, hi, it's Dan Jenkins. Yes, from the church. We are fine here, thank you, and you?" "Good. Listen, I was wondering if you could see my son sometime soon. He has a bit of a problem, and I think you can help him." "Really? This afternoon at 12:30? That's perfect. I'll make sure he gets there. Thank you, Gina. I owe you, of course. Take care of yourself and give your little one a big hug for us." "Okay, bye." He hung up the phone and looked at me. That was Gina. She said she had a cancellation and can see you today at 12:30. She needs you to bring your financial records and tax returns for the last 2 years. "Okay," I said. "I guess I better head home to pack my things." "Sounds like a plan, son," Dad said. "You know you have to tell Sarah about the STD. She needs to get tested before she spreads it any further." "Maybe the girls should stay with us for a while," Mom suggested. "The house might get a bit tense with all this going on." "You are right," Dad said. "They should stay a few days until things settle down. Why don't you bring them over after school? We'll make sure they get to school on time." "I will. Thanks, Dad," I said. We talked for a few more minutes, and then I got up to leave. Dad hugged me at the door. "It will work out, son," he said. "Just don't do anything stupid. I know you probably want revenge on Sarah, and I can't blame you for that, but remember Romans 12:19. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." "You got it. I don't want to bail you out of jail. You have 2 girls to think about." I grinned. "No problem, Dad, I got it," I told him. I got back in the car and headed home. Dad was right about one thing. I wanted revenge on Sarah and her lover or lovers. I had loved her exclusively for over 15 years and was beyond upset that this was her repayment. I got home and started digging through my files to find my old tax returns. I also had to search through Sarah's things to find her returns. About 8 years ago, she suggested we file separate returns to avoid paying extra taxes. I agreed, thinking it was a smart move. But when I found her tax forms, I discovered the real reason she wanted to file separately. She had been earning far more in bonuses and commissions than I had known. I wondered where all the extra money had gone. Digging deeper, I found a folder of bank statements from a bank I did not recognize. The latest statement showed that she had nearly $1 million saved over the past 8 years. What was she planning, I wondered? Was this her way out, planning to leave once the kids were off to college? I took the statements and her tax forms and put them into my folder. As I got into my car, my phone beeped with a text message. It was from Sarah, telling me she had a late showing and not to wait for dinner. "Yeah, right," I thought. "No problem," I replied. "I'll see you when you get home." I sent the message, pondering if she'd notice I hadn't said I loved her. Whatever, I thought. I arrived at Gina's office, parked, and headed to her suite. Inside, a pretty blonde receptionist greeted me. "I'm here to see Gina Hawkins," I said. "I have a 12:30 appointment." She checked her computer, then smiled and showed me to Gina's office. Gina stood up, and we shook hands. "Good to see you, Tom," she said with a smile. "Would you like some coffee?" "Coffee sounds great," I said. "You're welcome. Gina looked at the receptionist. "Could you bring 2 cups of coffee, please?" "Sure," the receptionist said, leaving and returning with 2 cups of coffee. Gina motioned for me to sit down, and I did. "I was surprised to hear from your father this morning," Gina said. "So, what's the problem?" "Yeah, it looks like Sarah is cheating on me," I said. "I'm sorry to hear that," Gina replied. "I thought you two were solid." "I thought so too, but not so," I said. "Why don't you tell me what happened?" Gina asked. I explained about our marriage, the clinic visit that morning, and the bank statements I found. "I understand how you feel," Gina said. "Let me explain a bit about divorce in this state. It's not about justice. It's about money. More specifically, how much you have and how much your wife's lawyer can get. Even though this is a no-fault state, you can file for divorce on grounds of adultery, but you need strong evidence." "What about the STD she gave me?" I asked. "It sounds convincing, but her lawyer could argue you got it from another woman," Gina said. "We know that's not true, but what matters is what the judge believes. As for the money she saved, she could claim it was for a retirement surprise." "You don't believe that, do you?" I asked. "No, I don't. It looks like an exit plan. She's waiting for the right moment, probably until the girls finish school. But proving that in court will be tough." "So I'm just unlucky, is that it?" I asked. "No, not at all," she said. "I can get a private detective on this today if you want. If she's cheating, we'll catch her. It'll be costly, but you'll have evidence for court." "Yes, let's do it," I said. "Okay," she said. "Gather all the information you can, make and model of her car, license plates, any idea where she might be." "Hold on," I said, pulling out my phone. "I installed a phone finder app when she lost her phone a few months ago. Let me see if it works." I opened the app and ran a search. Her phone was at a house on the north side of town. I showed Gina the address, and she noted it. "Okay, let me call my private investigator," she said. She called and emailed him the information I provided. After ending the call, she looked at me. "We're set. If she's up to something, we'll know soon. Now let's discuss your case. You have 2 teenage daughters, right?" "Yes, Lily is 14 and Emma is 13. They're not old enough to decide which parent to stay with, but close. Do you want custody?" "Yes, I do," I told her. "Okay, but know that courts usually favor the mother for primary custody. It may take time, but we can try." "Who has primary custody now?" she asked. "Technically, Sarah, but she's often out in the evenings," I said. "Are you sure these are your children?" she asked. "I think so, yes." "Does it matter?" "I'm on their birth certificates. I raised them and changed their diapers. I pay for their care." "I understand," she said, "but it's good to know for sure. I'll give you a lab's address for a test kit. Results come quickly." "Okay," I said. "What about our house? Do we own or rent?" "Neither," I said. "It was my grandparents'. After they died, it went into a family trust in my parents' name. They let us live there, so no mortgage to deal with." "Good," she said. "We need to divide joint assets, like bank accounts, 50-50. I'll give you a list of tasks." "Is there anything else?" I asked. "Not now," she said. "I'll start the paperwork, but let's see what my PI finds before proceeding. Fill out the checklist anyway." "Should I meet Sarah face-to-face?" I asked. "That's a good idea. Tell her she needs to get tested for STDs. You won't be liable if she spreads it." "Makes sense," I said. She finished the paperwork and handed me a checklist and a lab card. "Anything else?" I asked. "That's all for now," she said. "Handle this, and we'll update you when we hear from the investigator. About the fee, ask my secretary. And Tom, don't do anything stupid. We'll get through this. It won't be fun, but it will improve." "I know," I said. "Thanks for your help." "You're welcome," she said. "We'll be in touch." With that, I left, wrote a prepayment check, and headed to the lab. After getting the kit, I went to the bank and reviewed most of what Gina had advised, then headed home. Most guys would probably sit down and get drunk, agonizing over what happened and why, but I didn't. Sure, it hurt. I'd never felt such anger and betrayal, but I don't drink and never have. That was another rule I grew up with. My parents never drank, and neither did I. I made coffee and sat at the table with a cup when it was ready, but I didn't have time to dwell on it as my two angels burst through the door. They usually got home around this time from the bus, but they usually didn't see me at this hour. "Daddy, you're home," Lily said. "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Daddy, why are you home so early?" Emma asked. "It's been a hectic day," I told them. "Why don't you pack enough stuff for a few days? You'll stay with your grandparents for a while." "Why, Daddy?" Emma asked. "What's going on? Is something wrong with Mom? Did you two fight?" "Actually, yes, something is wrong, and no, your mom and I didn't fight," I said. "I'm afraid that might come later." "You caught her cheating, didn't you?" Lily asked, looking at me with wide eyes. I was taken aback. "What makes you think that?" I asked her. She lowered her gaze in embarrassment. "I overheard her talking on the phone a couple of times," Lily said. "I couldn't catch everything, but she was using that fake voice she uses to annoy you." "Yes, I know the one," I said. "What did you hear?" "Something like, 'I can't wait to see you again, love,' and she giggled like a little girl. It didn't sound like a professional call at all. 'I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I know how much you hate gossip,' she said. "It's okay," I said, hugging her. "Plus, she's been acting pretty strange lately," Lily added. "It's like she doesn't have time or interest in talking to us." "Do you feel the same way?" I asked, turning to Emma. She nodded. "Yeah," she said, "like she doesn't want us to bother her or something." "Well, you two can come to me anytime you want," I said, hugging them both. "But first, I need to swab both of your cheeks." "Cheek swab?" Emma asked, opening the test kit. "Yes," I said. "My lawyer suggested I take a DNA test." "You don't think we're your children?" Lily asked. "I do," I told her, but she wants to be sure. "So you're getting a divorce?" Lily asked. "Looks like it," I told her. "Is there no way you can forgive what she did?" Emma asked. "I don't think so," I told her. "She gave me a little gift. I had to see a doctor this morning." "Oh, shoot," Lily said, almost cursing. "Sorry," she said awkwardly. "It's okay, sweetheart. I've wanted to curse more than once today," I told her. "Now let me take some samples from you." I took a swab and wiped the inside of Lily's cheek, then did the same with Emma. After their samples were in the kit, I took a sample from my cheek and put it in a separate vial. "Okay, you two go upstairs and pack enough for a couple of nights. We need to leave in 15 minutes, and don't forget your homework," I said. They went to their rooms to pack while I assembled the test kit. I planned to take the kids to their grandparents and then take the kit back to the lab. "Daddy, if you get divorced, can I stay with you?" Lily asked as I drove. "Yeah, me too," Emma added. "I hope so, girls," I said. "I'm asking for custody, but you should know that courts usually give custody to the mother." "I don't want to stay with her," Lily said. "Right now I hate her for what she did to us." I thought about telling her not to hate her mother, but decided against it. She was expressing my feelings. "I understand how you feel, sweetheart," I said. "Just remember, no matter what happens, I'll always love you and be there for you." "I love you too, Daddy," she said, tears streaming down her face. Seeing her tears made me even angrier at Sarah than before. I vowed to make her pay for this. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." I heard my father's words in my head. Finally, we reached my parents' house, and I pulled into the driveway. I turned to the girls, hugged them, and kissed them, promising to call them later. After they got out of the car, we all went to the porch where my dad was waiting. The girls hugged him and took their stuff inside. I hugged him, and Mom came over to greet us. "I better get to the lab before it closes," I said. "Are you okay?" Dad asked. "I'm as fine as I can be under the circumstances." "Okay, we'll pray for you. Give us a call and let us know how it went with Sarah," he said. "I will, but I'm not sure when that will be," I said. "It's okay, hun," Mom said. "You can call any time." "Thanks," I told her, hugging her. "I better go." I got back in my car and headed to the lab. I arrived half an hour before closing and handed my test kit to the receptionist. "How soon will I get the results?" I asked. "We should be able to get them to you by the end of the week," she said with a smile. "Great, thanks," I said. I left and headed toward the house. On the way, I decided to call Lisa, Sarah's older sister. I put in my Bluetooth earpiece and hit the speed dial on my phone. She answered after the second ring. "Hey, Tom, how's my favorite brother-in-law doing?" she asked. I've had better, I said. I have a question for you if you have a minute. Of course, she said. Have you talked to Sarah lately? Not since we were at your place last month, she said. Everything okay? No, it's not, I said. She listened silently as I gave her a summary of what was going on. My God, she said, I hate to say it, Tom, but it looks like she's back to her old habits. Old habits? What do you mean? I asked. She was pretty wild when she was young, went through guys like most people go through socks, cheated on almost every guy she dated. She was like that for most of high school and college. After she met you, she calmed down. I thought she was over it. She told me she met her soulmate and wouldn't play the field anymore, so I didn't say anything to you. I'm sorry. I probably should have. No, it's okay, I said. It's not your fault. I understand. I planned to kick her out tonight and wanted to see if she could stay with you. Actually, yes, I said. If that's okay with you. I heard her sigh over the phone. I think she might stay here for a while, at least until she gets a grip on herself, she said. Frank won't be too happy about it, though. I don't want it to cause you problems, I told her. It's okay. He'll deal with her, just as long as she doesn't stay here too long. Okay, thanks, I appreciate that. I don't know when she'll be home tonight, but I'll call you when she leaves. Thank you, she said. How did the girls take it? They're not happy, but they're doing better than I thought they would. You've raised a couple of good young women, Tom. You have to be strong for them, she said. I'm trying, I said. Well, I should get going. I still have to make dinner. Call me later, okay? I will, I told her, before we ended the conversation. I got home and decided to heat some leftover meatloaf for dinner. I had just finished watching the evening news when my phone rang. I saw that it was a call from Gina and answered it. Hi, Tom, she said. Hey, I replied. Working late tonight for you, she said. Yes, she said. I just got some preliminary information from the private investigator. It seems your wife has been very busy. She's been with 3 men since 1 o'clock this afternoon. Wow, I thought. 3 men in one day? When did she even have time to work? Really? I asked. Yes, she said. Anyway, I'm forwarding the information to your email. Photos, video, and a summary of the report. I'd recommend you don't watch the video, but you should listen to the last few minutes. It's pretty enlightening stuff. So, do you now have enough evidence for a divorce? Oh yeah, she said. Call me when you're done listening to the audio recording, okay? Okay, thanks, Gina, I said. When we finished talking, I started up my laptop and checked my email. I opened the video and skipped to the point Gina had mentioned. I had no desire to watch the video of her having sex, but was curious to hear what she had to say. I see you're married, a man said, pointing to her rings. For the moment, she replied. I noticed you're married too, she added, glancing at his ring. Yes, my wife and I have an open marriage, he said. And you? It's not an open marriage like yours, but I allow liberties when they arise, she said. So your husband doesn't know? He asked. No, he doesn't, she said. He has no idea what kind of woman he's married to. I was fuming. What's the matter? Isn't he doing well at home? The man asked. He had better be. I taught him everything he knows, she told him. You taught him? The man asked, shocked. Was he a virgin when you got married? Believe it or not, he was, she said. Imagine a 23-year-old virgin. He's a religious freak. Doesn't smoke, doesn't drink. Hell, he doesn't even swear. He'd probably have a meltdown if I cursed next to him. He didn't even know how to have sex until we were married. Sounds like a loser. So why do you stay with him? Do you love him? He asked. In a way, I guess so, at least a little bit. He's a good father to my girls, takes good care of them, and doesn't fuss when I get home late. Other than that, he's a total bore, she said. The girls are his world. How long have you been seeing him, if you don't mind me asking? He asked. I don't mind, she replied. Honestly, I've been having fun my whole married life, and he still doesn't get it. So he has no idea? He asked. No, he has no idea, she said. He has never been with another woman, so he doesn't even know the difference. At that moment, I had to hold back a gagging fit. It made me sick to think that she had been doing this to me our entire marriage. Do you plan to stay with him? He asked. Yeah, for now, at least until the girls graduate high school and go off to college, she said. That's about 4 or 5 years from now. I will have everything ready to run away by then." "Why wait?" he asked. "Because the courts usually give custody to the mother, and the last thing I want is to end up with 2 teenage girls on my hands," she said. "What do you plan to do after that?" he asked. "I plan to celebrate, maybe have fun with a few people at once, maybe go on a cruise or retire to Costa Rica or something." "I don't know," she said. "Oh, I have a couple of guys. Do you think you can get away for the weekend?" "Sure," she said. "I can tell Tom I have a mandatory weekend seminar or something. He will believe anything I tell him. Let me know when you can get out and we will set it up. You have my number." "I will," she said with a smile. He glanced at his watch. "It's getting late and it's time for me to leave. I look forward to seeing you again, sweetheart." "I am looking forward to it myself," she said. He left the room and Sarah settled down on the bed with a huge grin on her face. "Oh, Tom," she said to the empty room, "you have no idea what is in store for you." I finished the video and wiped away the tears that were now streaming down my face. I had not realized she was so angry. I sighed and dialed Gina's number. "I just finished the video," I said. "You were right, it was enlightening." "So, how do you want me to proceed?" she asked. "Burn it to the ground," I said firmly. "Consider it done," she said. "What about all those guys she was with? Can we go after them too?" "I'm afraid not," she said. "Alienation of affection lawsuits are no longer allowed in this state. Don't worry about it. I have a feeling things are not going to go well for them when their wives catch gonorrhea." "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord," I said quietly, repeating what Dad had told me earlier. Gina giggled at that. "Well, I have to go," she said. "I will prepare the papers and serve her this week. She wants to run away. We will set it up for her, only it won't be the way she wanted it." "Thanks, Gina. I owe you one," I said. "Just take good care of your girls," she said. We finished talking and I leaned back on the couch, tears streaming down my face. It pained me to think that I had given Sarah the 15 best years of my life. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. It was a call from Sarah. "Hi," I said, answering the call. "Hi, Tom," she said. "Are you okay? You don't sound good." "It's been a bad day," I said. "What is going on? I'm finishing up work. I think I made another sale," she said. "Okay," I said in a neutral tone. "I will be leaving soon, so I will be home in half an hour, okay?" "Yes, of course," I told her. "Okay, I will see you when I get home. Love you," she said in her fake voice. "Me too," I said, ending the conversation. I wondered if she noticed that I had not told her I loved her, and then realized I did not care if she noticed or not. I printed out the 4 pictures, put them all on one sheet of paper, and put them in an envelope. I intended to confront her tonight when she got home. I laid out all my things on the kitchen table, then made a cup of coffee and sat down to wait for Sarah to come home. I waited and waited. After an hour, she still had not shown up, but I figured she was probably lingering somewhere, so I kept waiting. 2 hours later, she still had not shown up, and I was getting worried. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message and sent her a text, but got no response. 3 hours later, there was still nothing. I started to wonder if she had been in an accident. Almost 3.5 hours later, I got a call on my home phone. I picked up the phone, hoping it was her, but it was not. "Tom Jenkins," I said, answering the call. "Mr. Jenkins, this is Angela Barnes from Mercy Hospital. Are you related to Sarah Jenkins?" "She is my wife," I said. "Mr. Jenkins, your wife was in an accident and has been brought here for treatment. Can you come as soon as possible?" "Yeah," I said. "Is she okay? What happened?" "I am sorry, sir. I cannot give you that information," Angela said. "Her doctor would like to speak with you when you get here. Just ask to be called to the courtesy desk, and they will take care of you." "Thank you," I said. She ended the conversation, and I wondered what had happened. I put the paper with the pictures in an envelope and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I thought about calling Dad or Lisa, but decided to wait until I had more information. I jumped in the car and hit the road. I reached the hospital and went inside. As I approached the courtesy desk, I introduced myself to the middle-aged lady behind the counter and gave her my wife's name as a patient. She checked for Sarah on the computer and turned to the other woman next to her. "Would you please escort Mr. Jenkins to the ICU?" she asked. "Sure," the other woman said and looked at me. She went around the counter and asked me to follow her, which I did. We went upstairs to the ICU, and I was met by a uniformed police officer. "Mr. Jenkins?" he asked. "That's me," I said. "I am Officer Simpson. I am the one who responded to the report of your wife's accident," he said. "What happened?" I asked. "She was driving through the intersection of 3rd and Main when she was hit by a truck. The other driver was drunk, ran a red light, and hit her car on the driver's side." "I am very sorry," he said. "It's okay," I said. "Her car was taken to the junkyard. There is not much left of it," he said, handing me a business card from the tow truck company. "If there is anything I can do to help, give me a call." "Thank you, officer," I said, taking his card. When he left, a man in a white medical coat approached me. "Tom Jenkins?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I am Dr. Blake. I am the doctor in charge of your wife's treatment. Can we talk for a moment, please?" "Sure," I said. He led me into a small room, closed the door, and sat down in a chair in front of a small round table. I sat in the other chair across from him. "How is my wife doing?" I asked him. "She has several broken bones and quite a lot of internal injuries. She also took a severe blow to the head. We have put her in a medically induced coma to help her recover, but there is more." "Did you know your wife has gonorrhea?" he asked. "Yes, I learned that firsthand this morning," I said. "And I take it you are being treated for that?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Good, but that is not all. Our initial tests indicate that she may be HIV positive. We have sent her blood for a full blood test, but it will take a few days, if not weeks, to get the results." "Have you been tested for HIV?" he asked. "Not that I know of," I said. "They drew blood when I went to urgent care this morning, but I do not know if they checked for that. I suggest you see your primary care physician as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be a good time. The sooner you take the test, the better. If either or both of you test positive, you should discuss this with your doctor. In general, if you practice safe sex and take your medication, you should be able to have a fairly normal sex life," he said. "How long will she be in the coma?" I asked. "It depends on her. It could take anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks, depending on how quickly she heals. She could be here for a while after that." "Can I see her now?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "She could use your support right now." I grinned to myself. He stood up and opened the door. "She is in room 5 over there," he added, pointing to her door. "Thank you, doctor," I said, shaking his hand. I walked into her room and looked at her. She was covered in bandages, and a cast covered one leg up to her hip. Her face was black and blue, and a few cuts had been stitched up. She looked like she had been through a war zone. I said a prayer for her, and then removed my wedding ring. I took out the envelope with the pictures and wrote her name on the front, then put my ring inside and sealed the envelope. I looked at the nurse who was taking care of her. "Could you make sure she gets this when she wakes up?" I asked. "Of course," the nurse said. "Put it on the tray over there," she added, pointing to an empty tray. "Thank you," I said, placing it on the tray so Sarah could see it. I took one last look at the woman on the bed. As much as I hated what she had done, I did not want to see her like this. Seeing that she was still wearing her rings, I took them off and put them in my pocket. "Goodbye, Sarah," I said quietly. "I will see you later." The nurse looked at me kindly as I left the room. I called Lisa on the way home from the hospital to update her. She was shocked when I told her what had happened and what the doctor had told me. "Tom, you know Frank won't let her stay here if she's HIV positive," she said. "I know it will be safe, but he won't want her around the kids. I can't go against him on this issue. Her parents retired a few years ago and moved to Florida, so that is out of the question. Then I guess I'll have to find her an apartment," I said. "I think it's for the best. I'm sorry, Tom, but I'm not going to prioritize her over my family," Lisa said. "She made her bed, now she has to lie in it." "I don't care. When you find a place for her, I'll help you move her things, but then I'm done with it." "I understand," I replied. "I don't blame you. It's getting late and it's time for bed. "Keep me posted, Tom," she said. "I will," I told her. "Thanks." It was almost midnight when I got home, exhausted. I undressed and fell into bed, asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. The next morning I called the doctor's office for a same-day appointment. I was surprised when they said they had an opening for later that morning. I then called my parents to tell them what had happened. They were shocked about the accident and that she might be HIV positive, but they said they would take the girls to the hospital if they wanted to see her. I also told them about the evidence I had received. Dad asked me to forward it to his email address. "It's really bad," I told him. "It's all right, son," he said. "I can handle it." After forwarding the files, I called Gina to update her. She was shocked too, but said it would give her time to finalize the divorce papers. I then called Sarah's office to inform them of her accident. They expressed their condolences and promised to visit her. The next 2 weeks were hectic. I found a 2-bedroom ground-floor apartment with an attached garage, put down a deposit, and paid 2 months' rent in advance, all from Sarah's half of our savings. The girls and Lisa helped pack up all of Sarah's belongings, including our wedding album, and we moved them to the apartment. I also received the DNA lab report and was relieved to confirm that both girls were indeed mine. I couldn't help but smile at that. I met with the insurance adjuster who inspected Sarah's car. I wondered how she had survived the accident. The insurance agent said the same thing. Since the car and the insurance policy were in her name, she would get a check. I retrieved her belongings from the car and took them to her apartment. "Have you stopped by Sarah's?" my mom asked a week after the accident. "No, I haven't," I replied. "At least not since that first day." "Why?" "I was just curious," she said. "She's made it clear that she doesn't care about any of us and wants to run away." "I'm giving her what she wants, just not on her timeline," I said. 2 weeks after that fateful Monday, I visited the doctor. I was cleared of the gonorrhea Sarah had given me, but the doctor was still waiting to see if she had infected me with something worse. The pain in my groin was nearly gone, but the emotional pain in my heart would take much longer to heal. I called John and told him I would return to work the next day, which made him very happy. That same day, I received a call from the hospital informing me that Sarah had finally woken up from her induced coma. The nurse who called said they were conducting tests and suggested I visit her late that night. That worked for me. I called Gina to share the news. She had filed the divorce papers with the court, and we were both waiting for Sarah to wake up so she could be served. She arranged for the bailiff to meet me at the hospital in the afternoon. My next call was to Lisa, who agreed to meet me in Sarah's room. I told the girls that their mother was awake, but they only shrugged, saying, "Never mind. I'm going to see her this afternoon. Would you like to come with me?" I asked them. "No thanks, Dad," Lily said. "I'm too mad at her right now." "Me too," Emma added. "Besides, I have a lot of homework to do." "Okay, then I'll take you to your grandparents when I leave," I said. I knew it would be harder on them than on me, and I didn't want to force them to see their mother if they didn't want to. Around 4:30, I drove them to Mom and Dad's house and explained that Sarah was awake and I would meet Lisa and the bailiff there. "Let us know how it goes, son," Dad said. "I will," I said. "I'll come back for the girls when I'm done." "Good. Then you can have some of Mom's lasagna when you get here," he said with a smile. Mom's lasagna was legendary and always lifted my spirits. "Sounds good," I said before leaving. When I arrived at the hospital, I went to the room where Sarah was being cared for. I saw Lisa outside the nurse's station talking to the doctor, and I noticed a man in a brown jacket not far from her holding a manila envelope. This was undoubtedly the bailiff. I walked over to the nurse's station and spoke to the doctor. "How is she?" I asked. "She's conscious, and her vital signs are normal," he said. "The antibiotics we gave her worked, and we're just monitoring her. She seems to be recovering well. However, I want to keep her here for another week, but she should be able to go home after that." "Okay," I said. "Is she allowed to have visitors?" "Yes, but not for too long," he said. "I'm not staying long," I told him. He nodded understandingly. Lisa and I headed into Sarah's room, and the process server joined us. Sarah looked up as we entered. I saw that she had opened the envelope I had left on my first visit. "Hi, Tom. Hi, Lisa," she said quietly. "Sarah," I replied. Lisa remained silent. Sarah looked at me sadly before speaking. "So you all found out," she said, pointing to the envelope. "Yes," I told her. "So were you following me or something? How did you know?" she asked. "You passed your illness on to me," I said. "That's how I found out. And yes, I followed you after that. I have pictures, videos, and audio, more than enough to prove infidelity." I looked at the bailiff and nodded. He looked at Sarah. "Are you Sarah Jenkins?" he asked. "Yes," she said quietly. He handed her the envelope and took a picture. "You've been served," he said before leaving. "You couldn't even wait until I was out of the hospital to serve me?" Sarah asked. "No," I said. "You were the one who wanted to run away. I just moved your schedule forward a few years." "Do the girls know?" she asked. "Yes, they do," I told her. "And they don't like you much right now. That's why they're not here. And you don't have to worry about being burdened with them. I'm asking for full custody. I will grant you liberal visitation rights if they want to see you, but right now they want nothing to do with you." "I don't blame them, not one bit," she said, looking shocked that I had used her own words against her. "And I understand you hate me too," she said. "Hate is a strong word," I said. "Let's just say I don't think very highly of you anymore." She nodded. "Do you think you can forgive me?" she asked. "Maybe someday, when I can look at my girls and no longer see the pain and suffering on their faces. Pain and suffering caused by you, by the way, and the girls are mine. I had their DNA tested." "Where will I go when I'm released?" she asked. "I rented an apartment for you. Lisa has agreed to take you there when you get out," I said. Sarah looked at her older sister when I said that. "All your stuff has already been moved and the utilities are in your name," Lisa said. I pulled out an envelope and handed it to Sarah. "This is your half of our joint bills, minus the deposit and 2 months' rent for the apartment. Since your car was totaled, you'll get a check for that as well." She accepted the envelope and nodded. "By the way, I also found out about your secret savings. My lawyer has frozen that account. If you sign the papers, she'll release the funds, minus my share, of course," I said. She looked at me, clearly stunned that I had discovered her hidden money. "I'll fight you for it," she said. "I wouldn't recommend that," I replied, "unless you want the evidence I have to go public. It's very incriminating." She deflated at my words. "Have your lawyer review the papers. I'm sure you'll find them as fair as possible under the circumstances. Then sign them and we can end this marriage." Sarah glanced at Lisa, hoping her sister would intervene on her behalf, but she didn't. "You foolish woman," Lisa snapped. "I warned you years ago that you'd face consequences if you didn't change. You didn't just deceive your husband and children, you deceived me when you said you'd left all that behind. I promised Tom I'd take you to your apartment when you got out, but that's it. After that, I'm done with you." "What?" Sarah asked, tears streaming down her face. I knew how close they were, and I could see how hard this was for my sister. "You heard me, you liar," Lisa said. "After I take you to your apartment, I never want to see you again until you apologize to your husband and your daughters." With tears in her eyes, Sarah looked at me. "I'm so sorry, Tom," she said. "I know you don't believe me, but I love you." "You're right, I don't believe you," I said. "Sign the papers, Sarah, and end this now." She nodded without saying anything. "Goodbye, Sarah," I said as I started to leave, but she spoke before I reached the door. "Can I call the girls Tom, please?" she asked. "You can call any time you want," I told her, "but I can't promise they'll talk to you." "I understand," she said quietly. "Thank you for that, at least." "You're welcome," I said, turning away from her. As I walked across the room, I noticed the disapproving looks of the nurses. They didn't approve of me serving her divorce papers in the hospital. Too bad, I thought. I drove to my parents' house and found solace in a generous portion of my mom's lasagna. The divorce proceeded without issues. 3 months later, I was a free man in every sense. Not only was I free from Sarah, but I also learned that I had dodged a bullet and tested negative for HIV. Oddly enough, Sarah's tests came back negative as well. Gina handed me a check for a little over $450,000. half the money Sarah had hidden. I didn't need it all, so I put it into 2 accounts for the girls' college education. Life moved on for the 3 of us. Lily and Emma became my main focus. Sure, there were times when things were tough. Being a single dad with 2 teenage girls is no easy feat, but I managed with my mom's help and guidance. I haven't kept close tabs on Sarah's life, but the girls told me she was adjusting to being single again. Yes, they eventually talked to their mother and she apologized to them. It took almost a year for the girls to warm up enough to spend even an afternoon with her. She bought a new car and went back to selling houses, but with a different company. Her past actions became known, and her management wasn't pleased. She was given the choice to resign or be dismissed. She chose to resign and took a job at another firm where the girls said she was doing well and had finally dropped her false persona. As for me, I noticed several single ladies at church vying for my attention. I often found myself being given various dishes to take home. Pies, casseroles, and even lasagna from time to time. It seemed my daughters were eagerly waiting for me to find someone new. "Come on, Dad, you need to get out there and start dating again," Lily urged. "It's not good for you to be alone." "I wouldn't even know where to start," I said, "and I'm not alone. You two keep me very busy." "But we're not going to stay here forever. It's simple, Daddy," Emma said. "You just walk up to a woman and ask her out to dinner. You can do that, right?" I looked at my youngest daughter and wondered when she'd become a dating expert. "I guess I could give it a try," I said. That Wednesday night, I ran into Rhonda Carson in line at the coffee shop at our church. She had lost her husband in Iraq a few years earlier and was raising her 17-year-old daughter alone. She was one of the women who had given me a casserole for dinner. "Hi, Rhonda. How are you doing?" I asked. "Hanging in there, Tom," she said. "How about you?" "I'm doing fine, and I enjoyed the casserole you gave me last week," I said. "Thank you." "Do you manage to raise your girls alone?" she asked. "It's a bit challenging sometimes, but yeah, I manage," I said. She laughed. "Well, if you're managing, you're doing pretty well," she said. "How are you?" "You have a teenage daughter too," I said. "The hardest part is handling everything alone," she said. "I can relate to that," I said. We grabbed coffee and sat at a table talking about the challenges of single parenthood. When I decided to take a chance, I said, "Rhonda, I'm new to this whole dating scene, but would you like to have dinner with me sometime, maybe this Friday?" She thought for a moment, smiled, and nodded. "Yes, Tom, I'd like that," she said. "Where would you like to go?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I'd like to try the new Texas Roadhouse restaurant. Do you like it? I'd love a steak," she said. "Sure, that sounds tempting. Maybe we can go to a movie or something later." "Great," I said. "I can pick you up at 6:30 if that's okay with you." "That sounds wonderful," she said. "You can bring the girls and they can stay with Linda if that's okay with you." They had known each other for a long time and were already friends, so I thought it was a good idea. "Sounds good to me," I said. The girls were excited about my date with Rhonda, and they liked the idea of spending the evening with Linda, so it was all set. That Friday, I invited the girls over and we went out to dinner. Rhonda looked nice in her denim skirt, and we had a great time. We didn't get romantic that night, but she gave me a warm hug when I stopped in front of her house. I noticed 3 sets of eyes watching us from the window of her house, and I thought I saw them giving each other high fives. "That was the best night I've had in months," Rhonda said as I hugged her. "Same here," I said. "What if we do it again sometime soon? Maybe we'll send the girls to a movie and we'll stay home and relax," she added, smiling warmly. "I think you're onto something," I said, feeling a familiar excitement. The girls were happy about our date, and I had to admit that I was feeling good about it too, enjoying the time with Rhonda. "I'm not sure if anything long-term will come of this, but I'm willing to see where it goes. Reflecting on the past, I can't help but wonder what you would have done in my shoes. Could you forgive and rebuild? Or would you choose the path I took, seeking justice and a new beginning? I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories. Have you ever faced a betrayal so deep? Share your experiences. Your journey, like mine, might just inspire someone else to find their way through the darkness.